In this learning goal video, we're going to talk about the relationship between the sample standard deviation and confidence interval width. We'll use the used car prices data set to talk about this learning goal. If we compute a 95% confidence interval on the average asking price of Honda Civics on the internet, we get a 95% confidence interval of $12,401 up to $14,183. Now the sample mean was $13,292. The sample standard deviation was $4,535 for this data. So the question is, how would the interval change if the standard deviation was smaller, or if the standard deviation was larger, everything else remaining the same? Well, we used the theory-based applet to find the following out. We changed the standard deviation to something smaller and something larger, and we looked to see what the impact was. You'll notice that the middle column shows us the standard error for the real data with a standard deviation of $4,535. Notice that when we reduce the sample standard deviation, that's S, down to 2,000, that standard error gets smaller. When we move it up to 6,000, the standard error gets bigger. So, what's the relationship we see here? As the standard deviation gets larger, the confidence interval width gets larger. Essentially, that increased variability in car prices directly translates into less precision in our confidence interval. Summarized, as the sample standard deviation increases, the confidence interval gets wider. This is less important than the impact of sample size and confidence level on confidence interval width, because the sample standard deviation is not something that's under the researcher's control. Even here we kind of had to make up, well, what if the standard deviation was different? We want you to understand the relationship, which is pretty clear from the formula because the standard error formula is S over the square root of n. So as you increase S, you can see that that whole value, the standard error, increases, margin of error increases, and thus confidence interval width increases. But this is less important because the researcher is not going to be able to actively, well, most times they won't be able to actively change the value of S.